I'm Greg Wheatley, and my guest today is Dr. Jenny Busch. Dr. Busch is Associate Professor of Biology at Wheaton College, also serves as Department Chair. She is an alum of Wheaton College, and whenever we get somebody like that in here, it's always fun to talk about where they've been and how they found their way back to Wheaton College. So, Jenny, welcome. It's good to have you here on Inside Wheaton.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to be here.
Let's start there. You were a biology major at Wheaton?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I came in as a freshman, as a lot of freshmen do, interested in pre-med. So entered as a biology major. Enjoyed my first few classes. Took organic chemistry. If Dr. Wilkinson's listening to this, Dr. Wilkinson, thank you. And probably about my junior year, I started questioning whether pre-med was the way that God wanted me to go. I came in, really enjoying the human body, wanting to help people, but began to question that. And what really helped me decide was an internship that I did the summer after my junior year. I worked at the University of Nebraska Cancer Center in Omaha, and just had a really good experience. All the experiments I tried worked the first or second time,
Wow.
which never happens in the world of science. It's usually a 10% success rate. But that got me hooked on, pursuing a PhD. And
So more research.
More
oriented.
research, right. So I entered Vanderbilt University Medical School in their graduate program, majored in molecular physiology. So definitely very much in the medical side of things, but more academic rather than clinical. Thoroughly enjoyed my time there. I still visit Nashville very often. Just this past Easter, just last weekend, I was down there visiting friends. And so how did I get back here on faculty? For my fifth year homecoming, several of my college friends said, "Hey, let's all meet back at Wheaton." So we did, and I met with Dr. Chappell, who's now Dean of Natural and Social Science. She was my faculty member, so I did what most students do when they return, visit their previous faculty. And she asked me what I was doing, and I said, I'm finishing my PhD in molecular physiology, and she asked me if I wanted to apply for an open position. Now, the position that was opened was actually open because my former physiology prof, Dr. David Bruce, had passed away a few years earlier due to transplant complications. So I just assumed that position was filled, but it hadn't been. And now in hindsight, I know that God was holding it open for me.
Now, had you thought, Jenny, about up to that point, was college or university teaching where you were headed, or were you thinking more pure research in a laboratory?
I was one of those people, I think, Greg, who just took, one step at a time. I knew I wanted to pursue more education when I was here at Wheaton, so graduate school. And then my research was going really well toward the end of my time at Vanderbilt. And so I was planning on staying there, completing a postdoctoral work. And then God opened this door here at Wheaton. And, I look back on the major decisions that I've had to make in life, and I'm so grateful that he led me here.
In hindsight, isn't it, to see God's providence?
Decisions seemed so daunting at the time, but hindsight, it's just beautiful to see God's guidance.
How is it to be back at Wheaton? I mean, I like to ask this because I think, you're a student, now you're faculty, you're kind of on the other side of the fence. You see students, do you see yourself in those students sometimes?
I do, and I think that has helped me as a faculty member hopefully relate to them a little better. Now, I know several of my students will probably be listening to this interview. That could be good for them. It could be bad for them.
Right.
I say it could be bad for them because as a student myself, I may set the bar a little higher than some people for them.
You've been down the road.
Because I've been down the road. If I can do it, you can do it type of thing. But I am, people ask me, so why are you here at Wheaton? And it's for the students. I know Wheaton was a very formative time for me. My friends and I still talk about our time here at Wheaton, and so I'm glad to.
What about changes? So we won't give away we won't say how long ago you graduated. People can look that up on the website if they'd like. But when you compare what it felt like when you were here, has it changed a lot?
I don't know what I did without the SRC. I don't know what we did without Lower Beamer. But I think the students are pretty much the same. It's fun now to call my former professors my current colleagues.
Isn't that interesting?
So, I think for the most part, students are a lot like I remember myself being. I mentioned it being a very formative time. Time away from home, independent. Who did God make me to be as an individual apart from my parents?
Right.
Making my faith my own. I grew up in a Christian home, so I think the tendency there is to view God as, he's my family's God. But here is where I first really realized, God is my God.
Yeah, they're important years, aren't they? Tell me, Jenny, about your classroom experience. Tell me about what you like about teaching. What do you enjoy most about interface with the students?
Yeah, two of the major classes that I teach here at Wheaton are Biology 241, which is the first semester course for freshmen majors. And I also teach Anatomy and Physiology 1 and 2. And both classes have their high points. I enjoy the enthusiasm that the freshmen come in with. College is new to them. A lot of times it's their first college class in the sciences. I very much enjoy that. In my 300 level class, that's a subject that's very near and dear to my heart, having done my graduate work in physiology. What I appreciate about that class is being able to communicate to the students what I call the simplicity and complexity of our bodies. I say complexity because we still don't understand all there is to learn about the human body. But I also call it simple because they follow particular patterns. So we talk about pressure concentrations and we talk about ion concentrations and flow. And once students understand basic physiological properties, they can then apply those to the different systems of our body. I think what another part about that class that I enjoy here at Wheaton is bringing in the spiritual component, talking about God as our creator and just being in awe of his creativity in our bodies. Dr. Bruce, who was my physiology professor, he had a quote from Augustine on his syllabus that I'm paraphrasing it here, that said, "Men go abroad to study the wide expanses of the ocean, or to marvel at, the height of the mountains, and they pass by themselves without wondering." And I tell my students, in this class, we're not going to pass by ourselves. We're going to focus on ourselves.
Yeah. Well, you think about the psalmist, "I'm fearfully and wonderfully made."
Absolutely.
And you must have so many opportunities to see that, and then to have that privilege, as you're saying, in a Christian setting, where you can just stop and say, let's just marvel at this, right?
Absolutely. And we just celebrated Easter, and my tradition on the Wednesday before Good Friday is to take the whole class period and talk about the anatomy and physiology of the crucifixion. At this point in the class, the students have been exposed to all of the anatomical and physiological systems in our bodies. And so we take the time. I have students, list 8, 9 events of the Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, nailing on the cross, carrying the cross, flogging. And then what we do is we look at, okay, what muscles were involved? What nerves were involved? How was Jesus' body affected physiologically? And what we find there in this educational endeavor is there was such a battle going on, even in his physical body, trying to cope with the pain and cope with the blood loss. And as I told my students last Wednesday, what I hope this exercise does is deepen your appreciation and your thankfulness to Jesus for his sacrifice, deepen your worship on Maundy, Thursday, or Good Friday, and also heighten your celebration on Easter. Yeah. So it's just a real rich opportunity that I wouldn't have at other places,
sure.
Just to integrate that.
And I think one of the things you're reminding us of there, Jenny, is the fact that Jesus, while fully God, was fully human.
Absolutely.
And I think that sometimes we tend, as Christians, maybe we tend to cheat that part as much as we do his divinity, that he felt every single bit of pain that any of us would have.
Right.
Maybe even more fully, because it seems to me in reading the accounts that he was in control and was not going to let, he says, you don't take my life, I give it. And it seems like when it was time for him to die, he was the one in control.
Yeah, and even those words that he spoke on the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Just thinking of what he had to endure in his, respiratory system to get the air in and out to speak, or just the muscles in his face that he was using to form those words with the crown of thorns that were on his head. It's a glimpse, I think, into the crucifixion that not many people will get to see.
Well, and it's hard to look at, isn't it?
It's difficult. It's very sobering.
And I from a physiological point of view, I would say you would agree. It's probably one of the most gruesome forms of death. I mean, it was certainly,
from
at that
what I read,
time,
Romans knew what they were doing in the gruesome sense of the word.
Yeah. Let me turn a corner here and ask you to take off your biology hat and just put on your person hat. I know you'd like to read. I read on your website you like historical fiction, biography. What are you reading lately? What do you like to read?
I think one of the books that stands out most in my mind is a book by Eric Greitens called The Heart and the Fist. Eric Greitens is a former Navy SEAL, but he tells the story of, I believe it was Duke University that he attended as a young man, did some study abroad, and in his studies he realized that, yes, people in situations need charity, mercy, but there's also a sense of justice that's required. And so that's where the fist part of the title comes in, and he realized how important military might is in certain circumstances. So he decided to become a Navy SEAL, did several tours in Iraq and other places around the world. And now he's, I think he's managing, he founded and is managing an organization for veterans for when they return, how they can get involved in certain circumstances, certain areas. So I appreciated that book. Laura Hillenbrand's Unbroken. also, I don't know why I just mentioned those two. Both of them have a military theme.
Are you secretly ROTC here?
My dad and both of my grandfathers were in the service. But what a powerful story of forgiveness that's in that book.
What do you find? Like, go back to the students here. What do you find that students are grappling with today that maybe is different than when you were here? What are their pressures? What are they dealing with?
That's a great question. Personally, I think one of the pressures is time management. Now, that sounds maybe a little superficial, but I think when students, when other people struggle with time management, it's very hard to prioritize things. It's easy to lose focus of what's important or what should be important. And I think the temptation today is that the more we do, the more we're worth. I think self-worth is tied a lot into
sort of a badge to say that you're busy.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know as a faculty member, I'm guilty of that myself. But I think that just struggling with, how do I give of myself? How do I serve in meaningful situations without becoming so overwhelmed that I don't have the time or the effort to give to those situations fully? Mm-hmm. And, it's easy for me to sit here. I have a job, I'm making money. Students, though, they're looking for that next step. They're looking to get into graduate school or medical school or a job. And so they need to build up their resume. And so I think that's one thing that they're grappling with is, when is enough enough? Yeah. When can I just be me? Yeah. And maybe, pursue hobbies.
Right. And students here at Wheaton are, wanted to use the word notoriously, which is kind of a negative word, but they're very, very achievement oriented, most of them, and which can be a very good thing. But I think sometimes they do need to be reminded it's okay to breathe and take a little break, right?
Right. And like I said, I'm guilty of that too. I still remember this one poignant moment a few winters ago. I stopped 5 seconds before I got in my car, and I noticed the snowflakes that were on my car window. And just this moment of, wow, they're beautiful. How many snows have I just been passing by? The beauty. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And the same thing is true like with the springtime. The leaves and the blooming flowers. I mean, how beautiful. But oftentimes, I'll walk right by on my way to the next meeting or next destination. So,
yeah. What would you say to a student, Jenny, who, or to their parent who might be listening, considering the sciences and looking at colleges, junior year or so? Talk about what Wheaton has to offer and what you'd say to that person.
Yeah. I think Wheaton has a very strong science program here. We send quite a high percentage of our graduates onto graduate school, onto health professions careers. Speaking from personal experience, I went to a very reputable graduate school and felt very prepared, probably more prepared in some respects than my
undergraduate.
Right, from my undergraduate experience here at Wheaton. I would say Wheaton is special because it has a very strong academic science program, but it also has a very strong Christian component. And that makes Wheaton more special than a lot of institutions. So if you're a high school student listening, if you're a parent of a high school student listening, know that you might not have all of the science classes available to you that are available at a large private school or at a state school, but know that the courses that are available here are taught well. They're taught at a very high caliber, and the science curriculums in whatever major you choose here at Wheaton are designed to prepare the students well for whatever step they go on to next.
Jenny, it's great to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to visit with you. Dr. Jenny Busch is Associate Professor of Biology and the Department Chair at Wheaton College. And as she's mentioning, if you'd like to know more about the sciences, just go to wheaton.edu, where you can read plenty about biology and the other areas of science as well. For Inside Wheaton, I'm Greg Wheatley.